Hello, everybody. This is Aquataser. Today I'm going to be going over my Ayaka specifically, but I'll be going over a couple other characters as well. I do play Genshin Impact. I'm a big fan. One of the games I've played for quite a while, and I have invested a solid amount of money as well. But we don't talk about that. um, my favorite character, my main, the girl I got, first 5-star, Ayaka. Just going through her stats here. As you can see, I have some very optimized stats, I would say. Obviously, cryo damage goblet, 144 recharge, which is absolutely perfect. If you can maybe go a little bit lower, but you need to get a burst up. 44.3 crit rate, zero point 0.7 off the optimal amount, and 240.5 crit damage, and just under 2k attack. Ideally I could get 2k attack, but it's a bit difficult just considering how my artifacts have rolled, unfortunately. And in certain team comps, the one that I specifically use her in, and that I would recommend everybody use her in, um, you don't need any more attack because of getting tenacity from somebody like Kokomi, Mona, whoever you decide to use in that slot. Um, I'll show my Kazuha in a bit, but we'll get to that later. I do have Miss Splitter on her, of course I do. If I'm a whale, a dolphin, big spender, whatever you want to call it, I gotta get her Miss Splitter. This was actually my most recent addition to her build. I got it on her last banner. And it's funny because I have her C4, and obviously this is something that not everybody can do. I wouldn't actually recommend you do it unless you really, really like the character and you have the money to spend. Always spend responsibly. When I first got her, when I first got into the game, I got her C0 and C1. I actually got quite lucky. I lost a 50-50 after getting her C0, sorry, and I got a Mona and an Ayaka in the same temple. Her C2 is where you see a pretty significant power spike. C3 is obviously great because her burst was for damage, and C4 is that defense shred. So it makes her teammates do more damage, but also just kind of helps her as a main DPS. Of course, excuse me. Of course, she is triple crowned. My first triple crown, one of my only ones, and eventually I do plan to C6 her, but yeah, who knows if that'll actually happen. We'll go into our artifacts. This is kind of the section of the video where I'd like to it's a bit tough because you have to determine whether you need a bunch of recharge depending on the team comp you want to build. Her stats are always going to be kind of strange. I have decided, as you'll see here, I have this other piece, 16.8 recharge, 9.9% attack. This is probably an overall better piece than the one I currently run on her, even though this is almost a 40 crit value, just because of the recharge and the attack percent. But as you'll see later, I'm going to be overcapping energy recharge if I do use that piece. So this is the one I use on her. Could be better, obviously, but still pretty solid. Now this is a this is a very strange piece, and this is where my Ayaka build kind of deviates from the norm, I guess. The norm is kind of, oh, get her to 300 crit damage, you know, kind of stack as much as you can. But in reality, you want to have a bunch of recharge. And so I have this piece, which is obviously a lot better in terms of crit value and attack percent, but this piece is just much better performing overall. The better crit rate gets me closer to that optimal number, 45, and the reason you want to get 45 is because Blizzard Schrayer gives you 40 crit rate against 4 frozen enemies, and you also get another 15% from cryo resonance. So that's another 55 crit rate. And so if you're at 45 against frozen enemies, you're basically at 100. And even against non-frozen enemies, Blizzard Schrayer will give you 20% plus 15% from cryo res against enemies affected by cryo, I believe. So you still get an extra 35. So even if you're at 45, you're still getting up to that 80%, which is still fantastic. So I definitely need this piece. The energy recharge is fantastic. And as you can see here, my off piece is a circlet. And I'm sure anybody who's watching this and plays Genshin may be quite curious to see what that is. We'll figure that out soon. So I have this attack percent piece. Honestly, pretty bad. by my standards. I've farmed a lot of artifacts, and I pretty much only keep high crit value ones, or ones that'll serve a particular purpose. This one doesn't really serve a particular purpose, it's just kind of bad. If I were to get a better piece, even though I've farmed for, I mean, a very long time, I haven't been able to get one, so if I were to be able to get a better piece here, I would literally just want crit damage and attack percent. 10.5 crit rate, absolutely perfect. All things considered, on-set attack percent timepiece, still pretty solid, but that could be improved. This piece is also pretty terrible. You know, obviously, could be a lot better. But, you know, we can't have everything we want, right? On-set crowd goblet is kind of the best you can expect, I guess. And this is my off-piece. 22.7 energy recharge. 6.6 crit rate. And this is kind of where her energy recharge comes from on this build. And this is kind of where her build is going to deviate from what other people could be telling you to build her with. I would suggest getting energy recharge substats, but one thing you could do, if you have good substats on your energy recharge timepiece, and you don't have any energy recharge from other sources, you could run an ER timepiece. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but if I were to do that, I have these other pieces kind of for this specific scenario. If I were to do that, I could run this circlet, which is pretty good. I could go cryo. I don't have a lot of good goblets, just in general. This one's quite good though. So I could go energy recharge timepiece, no additional besides that 51.8, I'm pretty sure it is, right? Yep. And I could get up to 40 to 278, which is a lot more crit damage, but if you'll notice, I lose a solid amount of attack, which is not ideal. So, I don't know. It's really up to whatever you decide to meet your team. If you can get pretty much optimized substats like I have on my pieces, I would recommend that. But, you know, sometimes you just can't get everything perfect, so I don't have everything perfect on my build, and I've farmed for her for such a long amount of time. Also, I just realized I don't have the right timepiece. I was like, why is my attack so low? There we go. So, my Ayaka is pretty much perfectly optimized. In terms of team comps, I would personally recommend, I'm gonna just draft here, build some. This is the standard, all 5-star characters, unfortunately, but this is her best team comp in every kind of content. If you have Shenhe, Kazuha, Kokumi, Ayaka, you can put them on anything. It's just kind of how I would recommend building her after playing her for, I mean, about 2 years at this point. I've been playing Ayaka as my main DPS, so I've got quite a lot of experience. Shenhe is a great character for her. Honestly, I'd say Shenhe is only useful for Ayaka, unless you're running Freeze Ganyu, but Melt Ganyu is just better, so if you're in terms of meta, Melt Ganyu is just better. You could run Shenhe with Eula. I have Eula, and I have her built pretty well. I have her on the wrong set though, but figure that out later. Shenhe is just best with Ayaka. She has good cryo application, gives cryo damage bonus, gives a buff for her burst on a tap for skill, which is perfect. And she decreases, what's it called? Cryo res inside the field, so everything's perfect in Shenhe's kit for Ayaka. And she generates a solid amount of cryo particles, which is very important for Ayaka. If you don't have enough energy recharge, then you're going to be kind of suffering anyway, because the bulk of Ayaka's damage does come from her burst. Her multiplier is extremely high, but Shenhe is still good for generating particles. You can burst every other rotation instead of every rotation, just because Shenhe can typically get off 2 E's inside of 1 Ayaka rotation. So you generate about, I would assume, about 7 to 8 particles per rotation from your Shenhe. Your Ayaka probably won't be catching these unless you can set up the rotation to be that way, but I would definitely run a rotation in the way that I am showing the order characters here: Shenhe into Kazuha, into Kokubi, into Ayaka. I run Engulfing Lightning. I'm very lucky. I have 2 Engulfing Lightnings. But another good alternative is just Favonius. It's doesn't seem like it'd be good for Shenhe, but it is quite good, especially when you look at the set I run on her. I run 4-piece Noblesse on Shenhe. Running 2-piece attack is pretty much useless on her because if you just kind of think about it logically, I think it was the Jeff who put it. You're basically buffing Shenhe's attack because Shenhe's the one doing the damage from the quills, right? Because it's a flat attack onto your cryo character. So Shenhe is basically buffing her own attack by using 2-piece attack percent like Shiva now was in Gladiator on Shenhe. But if you use 4-piece Noblesse, you're buffing your entire team's attack by 20%. So it's not really in question, in my opinion. And the nice thing is you can still run triple attack percent on Shenhe, even on Noblesse, and you're going to be doing great. So I don't have like optimized artifacts. Even without that though, I still have quite a lot of recharge because of Engulfing Lightning. And the nice thing is, Favonius has a solid amount of energy recharge as well. You could use Scoured Spine. I level 90'd my Scoured Spine before I got Engulfing because I was going to use it on my Shenhe because it has high base attack and energy recharge. In terms of other weapons, those are honestly the 3 I would recommend unless you have Calamity Queller. But even if you have Calamity Queller, it's probably better to use Favonius, Engulfing, Skyward, any of those, just because Calamity Queller is kind of difficult to use if you don't have the right amount of energy recharge. You definitely want to be bursting with Shenhe every rotation. It's just a huge damage buff for Ayaka, and not being able to burst every rotation is a bit of an issue for her, so make sure you hit that energy recharge threshold for Ayaka team specifically. Next up, Kazuha. I have a very optimized Kazuha as well. Not in terms of EM and everything, because EM's kind of low, I guess, especially because I have Freedom Sworn. I have a very well Ayaka build, and that's kind of just because I wanted to set her up as much as possible. I got pretty much everything. I have C0 Kazuha and C0. I probably should have clarified. C0 Shenhe, C0 Kazuha, C0 Kokomi, and C4 Ayaka. So Kazuha, even if you take off Freedom Sworn, if you were lucky enough to get Xiphos' Moonlight is a 100% best in slot weapon for him, even if you have Freedom Sworn, unless you're in a specific team comp. Xiphos is just free energy recharge for your entire team. So unless your team is like mine and almost perfectly optimized, once again, I have very, very good energy recharge optimizations for this team comp. I have about 162 recharge on Kazuha while running triple EM. I have farmed for a lot of time to get these pieces. But Xiphos is just best in slot for Kazuha. The only nice thing about Freedom Sworn is that it does give an attack percent buff and normal charge and plunging attack buff for your team, but that's honestly not that necessary. If I didn't have enough ER, I would be running Xiphos. And I actually run Xiphos on my Alhaitham team comps because he scales so well off EM, as well as that energy recharge is honestly a lifesaver. Alhaitham definitely wants enough energy recharge to really get his burst back at the end of his rotations, and Xiphos is just perfect for that. So, Kazuha, best in slot weapon, 100% Xiphos Moonlight. I have Freedom Sworn, and it's great for Ayaka teams just because the attack percent buff, like I said, high EM, high base attack, and the charge attack bonus is useful for her, but if I didn't have enough ER, Xiphos is 100% the best in slot weapon for him. And obviously you just want to run 4 Viridescent on him. His talents don't really matter. I actually just recently got him to 788. I think I had him at 248 for about a year. So You definitely don't need higher talent levels on him. Sure, he does more damage, but it's completely unnecessary. His buffs come from his passive and his passives. Lastly, Kokomi. Kokomi's a really easy character to build. I run her on, well, okay, I have the wrong piece on her. I'm supposed to have this one. Or this one for my data, but either way, you run Kokomi all the time on 4-piece Tenacity, or if you're feeling really crazy, 4-piece Deepwood. I use 4-piece Deepwood on her in my Alhaitham Bloom teams with Milo, because no other character in that team comp really wants to run Deepwood. Saying Deepwood is just very essential for running a Bloom team, but I have a level 80 Throwing Tails. You can run a level 20, level 1, it doesn't matter. The nice thing about having a higher level 1 is that HP percent does matter for Kokomi, but for other characters it doesn't matter at all. And I run, I believe, healing bonus. Yeah, healing bonus circlet, 4-piece Tenacity, just get that 20% attack. Kokomi's fantastic for most teams, to be honest. She's very comfy, but especially for Ayaka teams. And I had a lot of her books, so I got her talents to 888, but it's, once again, you don't need to get her talents up to like 8. I would go like maybe 186, maybe. Even then, I mean, it's not necessary. She heals plenty. And obviously we've gone through my Ayaka. Alternative team comps. Mona is definitely a character that you can use with Ayaka. If you're going to use Mona with Ayaka, I would suggest maybe going Prototype Amber, which sounds kind of insane, but Prototype Amber honestly is pretty solid on Mona. Makes her tankier, it heals your team, which is pretty important because you're going to have to be running, let's see, I guess it would depend on what team comp you're running, but if you're not running Diona with Ayaka, which is what I'm going to get to, or Layla, I guess, if you're considering running Layla, Prototype Amber is probably a solid option. Just to get that healing, regenerate your burst if you don't have enough recharge. Other than that, just run Throwing Tails. It's the best weapon. Best catalyst in the game, in my opinion. Widsith is good for damage, but Throwing Tails is just broken. 48% attack is ridiculous. Especially because Ayaka's burst snapshots. I probably should have explained that before. Ayaka's burst is one of the few bursts in the game that does snapshot, which essentially means it keeps every buff that was on Ayaka at the time of casting. So even if the Throwing Tails buff wears off, even if the Freedom Sworn buff wears off, those will all be snapshotted onto Ayaka's burst, which means that it can do ridiculous, consistent damage. So that is 100% the reason why you run Throwing Tails, especially in an Ayaka team comp, with your Kokomi or Mona. If you're not running Mona, I love Mona. She was one of my first characters. She was my first crowned ability on a character. I used her for a long time. The issue with Mona is that she just doesn't have considerable enough uptime on her Hydra application, and Kokomi 100% does. Her burst even refreshes the duration of her E, so it gives really significant Hydra application. That's the reason why she's pretty much optimal, and she consolidates a healer role. If you don't have Kokomi, I would recommend running maybe Mona or Zincho, even if you don't need him on another team, and running Diona. Diona is an underrated option, to be honest, for Ayaka teams. I've heard Layla is alright. I don't even know where my Layla is. Probably, I think she is. I like her character design. She's cool. I don't know what she does. I think she shields and maybe heals, but in my opinion, Diona is just the better option. Diona, I think, gives... Well, obviously she shields, she heals, and then I'm pretty sure it gives Elemental Mastery at C6, which is pretty big, because you can buff your Kazuha as well if you have C6 Diona when you're inside of her burst. As well as that, she obviously heals, and then she also gives extra durability. Diona's shields are pretty weak. Her healing isn't super significant, but if the enemy is inside of the AoE of her burst, it also decreases their attack by 10%. So she's a pretty solid character. Another nice thing is she has so many hits on her E, her hold E specifically, that she has a very easy time proccing Favonius, which is her best in slot weapon. Um, she has a very, I guess you could run Sacrificial, but Favonius is her best in slot, in my opinion. She has a very easy time proccing Favonius. If you just stack crit rate and HP on her, you don't need anything else. I had her built at her level 70. I don't like her character that much, but she's just great. I used her in Ayaka teams for a very long time, up until I got the the Avengers over here of Shenhe, Kazuha, Pokemon. One thing I will do, maybe I guess I'll make a different video about Hu Tao, because I do have a very well built Hu Tao as well. So yeah, we'll stay here for this. Another option you can run in your Ayaka teams is Rosaria. I wouldn't recommend Rosaria as much. Her constellations don't really do that much. You don't need the crit rate sharing from her passive. Physical resistance decrease isn't that important. She doesn't really have anything that buffs your Ayaka teams, except for more damage overall, I'd say, than Shenhe, and she has pretty solid crab application, but Shenhe does the exact same thing, and Diona also has solid crab application and consolidates your rules better, so Rosaria, people say you can use her, but I would definitely not recommend it. The last option I'll go over for an Ayaka team would be Kaya. Kaya is just basically Rosaria, but a sword user, which overall I'd say is actually better because of how broken Favonius sword is. Favonius sword has so much recharge on it that you basically can use your Kaya and not have to worry about second recharge. Whereas on Rosaria, she doesn't generate many particles, and she also, if you use Favonius Lance, you're not getting that much recharge. You're getting about half the amount of Favonius Sword. So, like, because this is level 80, I have a level 90 Favonius Sword, but even then, I think it's like 30, I want to say it's like 31 or 32 recharge. Favonius Sword is just better. So if you do have Kaya built, or you want to build in, you have Constellations or something, I have C2, I would significantly recommend Kaya for just extra crit application and damage, but like I said, I think Diona's Ayaka's best free-to-play partner in crime. She's not technically free-to-play, because I guess you have to go through the gacha to get her, but Diona is fantastic. Very much like Diona and Ayaka teams. And with that, I will show you guys what it looks like in Abyss. Of course it's raining. I feel like it always rains whenever I'm trying to do anything in Genshin. I'm trying to collect crystal flies and it just starts raining all over the place. In terms of weapon recommendations for Ayaka, I would, for free to play, you can save up your Star Glitter by Blackcliff Longsword. This is her best DPS weapon. However, if you're deciding to go for a craftable weapon, Amanoma Kageyuchi is fantastic. I love this weapon. I used it for, man, basically since it came out. For a while I used Blackcliff, but I kind of switched between Amanoma and Blackcliff. Blackcliff is appealing because of the higher base attack and the crit damage and the attack percent buff after defeating an enemy, but the difference is that for Ayaka, you're probably actually better off using the passive from Amanoma Kageyuchi if you either recharge, or the energy, I guess specifically I should say. Ayaka's C1 kind of, it doesn't seem very useful, but it does actually matter for your rotations occasionally, being able to decrease the cooldown of your E. And specifically with Amanoma Kageyuchi, if you do have Ayaka C1, which is what I had basically since I started playing the game, you will be able to get maybe, I wouldn't say it's consistent, but you can definitely get maybe an extra seed per rotation, and so you're getting extra energy refund, and because Ayaka's burst is 80 energy cost, you pretty much need as much energy as you can get up until you have about that, I'd say 140 to 145 energy recharge area. But that's also assuming you don't have any Favonius weapons, any batteries, like big batteries, like Diona Favonius for your Ayaka. So I do love Amino Kaguchi a lot. That's probably the one I would recommend most people go for. Because it's free, you can craft it in Inazuma. Inazuma, you should do a quest to get the recipe. But for this, I'm going to be using Blackcliff, because I do want to keep my crit damage, and I'll get enough external attack buffs. My artifacts are going to stay the same, and obviously, I wish I could turn off constellations. But I feel like me nerfing, I'm trying to think, do I have a way to lower my damage even more? I feel like me more or less nerfing my Ayaka, I'm going to be nerfing my team as well. We're going to go level 20 or level 40 for Wingtails. I can't change my artifacts, these are fine. And then we will go, we'll go Iron Sting on Kazuha. We will go Iron Sting on Kazuha. Just trying to level the playing field, I guess you could say, for my team as much as I can. Obviously, like I said, I can't turn off. Also, I realized I'm going to use Knife of Light, speak. I'm going to use level 90 Skyward Spine because it's more realistic to assume that you have a level 90 weapon on your Shenhe, because base attack is what matters for her so much. Although, like I said, Favonius is really the way to go. So, I'm at 176 recharge on my Shenhe, 162 on my Kazuha, 127 on my Kokomi, and 144 on my Ayaka. Ideally, I would switch to Zyphos, but I realize not everybody has Zyphos, so that is the scenario we're gonna roll with. And if I had a better piece here, maybe I'll switch to this one. There we go. That's perfect. So now I'm at 196 recharge. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get my burst up, but we are going to run this, and we should be good. So, after effectively nerfing my damage output significantly more towards a free-to-play level, I will show you guys the Ayaka rotations. One thing I always do is I always set the character rotations or the order of the party. I always set it to the rotation I'm going to go in. So my rotation is always going to be Shenhe into Kazuha, into Kokomi, into Ayaka. And that's kind of just the way I've started organizing my parties. It just makes it easy. I just press 1, 2, 3, 4, switch back to 1 eventually. It's pretty easy. So here we go. Shenhe, catch the particles. I'm going to hit a Kazuha burst, swirl the cryo. E, catch the particles with my Ayaka, and let the damage go. Shenhe, Kazuha, and switch back. I'm going to E. I'm just going to generate some more particles, do some more damage, switch back to Shenhe, catch the particles again, Kazuha E, Kokomi, Ayaka E, and burst. I'm just going to watch them do their thing. And the one thing about Kokomi, as you can see, I don't have my E up. But the nice thing about Kokomi not having her E up as well is that her rotation, most of the time, I can't say all the time, but most of the time, her rotation, her E, lines up with the cooldown of the Thrilling Tales buff. Which means that you can effectively just kind of... Well, that's one issue with Ayaka. As you can see, my burst went the complete opposite direction of the way I was looking. And that's one of the things that I kind of wish they would fix with Ayaka, to be honest. It's really annoying when that happens. I don't know why it happens like that. It's just, her targeting is really weird sometimes. It's very annoying. I'm basically just on autopilot right now. The other nice thing is that if you're fighting these kind of lectors, you can use Kokomi to effectively just destroy the shields. And as you can see, I'm very efficiently getting my rotations back up. And now I can just normal attack with Kokomi and break the shield. Very wasn't exactly sure how to commentate over that because to me it's just second nature at this point. You just kind of rotate and switch your weapons around, um, or switch your characters around, kind of go with the flow. So if you don't have your Ayaka normal attacks, you don't want her to take damage just in case she's gonna die because Kokomi E runs out. Also, let me showcase that. The cooldown on Kokomi's E is 20 seconds. The cooldown on the Throwing Tails buff is 20 seconds. So essentially, if you rotate through to Kokomi again, and her E isn't ready, her Throwing Tails buff isn't going to be ready. Almost all the time. There's a little bit of a delay in the timing there, but that's essentially how it goes. Which is kind of nice, because when you switch to a character, the timer starts, and it's very easy to rotate properly. So you just kind of, what I do, I'll go through this rotation, normal attack, charge attack with my Ayaka, switch to Shenhe, and hopefully I'll have her burst back up. The one thing that does matter here is Engulfing Lightning makes it a bit easier to get your burst up because you get extra recharge after using a burst, but it's not necessary, we're still making it work. Kazuha gets his burst back up, and you just kind of funnel energy between these two, do a little bit of damage, then you start the rotation again. Kazuha after Shenhe into Kokomi. Kokomi will have her buff up with Throwing Tails, switch back into Ayaka, and you get that attack buff. And once you switch into Ayaka, you hit her E, dash, and if you have a splitter, dash, normal attack, and then burst. Ayaka will catch the particles from her E during her burst. And then you can gain all the damage from that and just kind of go from there. Obviously, once again, I wish I could showcase a C0, but I cannot, because Genshin has decided to not allow us to turn off constellations. If they did, it'd be amazing, but I don't know why they won't. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of show how the damage looks on my Ayaka team with this like optimized artifacts, everything like that. So I believe I have Miss Splitter. Yeah. Alright. Miss Splitter is definitely one of the best 5 stars in the game. It is so versatile, it's on so many different characters, ton of damage, and it is just so strong. So there will be a significant increase in damage. I'll use the same blessing as well. Also, Ayaka is actually better against single target enemies, at least in my opinion. So whenever you're using Ayaka against like AoE like this, that's where freeze is just so essential. So as you can see, I'm doing about 40k per tick on her normals, which is pretty ridiculous. I'm gonna freeze the enemies, swap an Ayaka. Alright, now we're going for a full rotation again. Everything should be back up. Go into Kazuha, EQ, Kokomi, Ayaka. And I couldn't catch the particles that time, so this is going to be a bit of an issue. This is where you kind of have to figure out how it works on your own. What I'm going to do is I'm going to normal attack with Kokomi, just to kill some time here. E, Q, or sorry, E, E. I'm going to E here, E on my Shenhe, Q on my Kazuha. There. Normal attack, E there, and hopefully, I don't have my burst yet, I should get some once he dies. Now, he's gonna change forms. That's fine. And now I just have to break his shield. So, in that scenario, I was kind of just deciding how to go about funneling my Ayaka properly. That was a weird zoom in. The nice thing about Ayaka is that her team comps decides the proper switching of Kokomi with Thrilling Tails buff, because that 48% attack is pretty essential. Her team comps are fairly reasonable, or rotations are fairly flexible. I mean, also her team comps are fairly reasonable, but the rotation is pretty easy. If you mess up, it's okay. You just have to funnel your Ayaka again, set up the rotation, and make sure you get all the buffs on her burst. Because like I said before, it does snapshot. As long as you get the buffs into the burst, you're going to be doing fine. I think that about covers it for Ayaka, especially with the fact that her normal attack does so much, or charge attack rather, does so much AoE damage. It's one of the things that people don't really focus on, but man, if you can group, like, and as well, I should say, Venti works with Ayaka as well. I don't have Venti, but I'm pretty, like, 90% certain that Ayaka Burst does hit enemies in Venti Tornado, and because he can group so well, it's one of the better alternatives to Kazuha, because Kazuha can't group as well. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to kind of show you guys the grouping capabilities of Ayaka's, or multi-hit abilities of Ayaka's charge attacks. These charge attacks are hitting the entire enemy group around me. It's actually ridiculous. And it's something that not a lot of people I've seen talk about for some reason. I honestly don't know why. Because, like, this is just, like, if I can hit this guy, just ridiculous. Crazy damage. And I don't know why people don't talk about it, because Ayaka's really good in single target, like I said before. I think that's where her best team comp is. But her AoE damage, if you have a bunch of, like, squishy-ish enemies lined up, it is ridiculous. Because you're hitting, I mean, I'm hitting, what, like 19k charge attacks, 17k charge attacks, 3 times because of her 3-hit charge attack multiplier. 3 times 17k about on each enemy, and it's like 5 or 6 enemies. That's a ton of damage output. And man, I just love my girl Ayaka. She's so great. One of the best characters in the game, in my opinion. A lot of people have said that she's boring, that she's, you know, plain. She gets too easy to use, too reliant on her burst for damage. I just want to dispel all those buffs. If you get her in a decent team comp, if you're still early game, even if you're not still early game and you're not trying to fully max the current abyss, because to be honest, the current abysses have been pretty brutal if you're not using like the best meta team comp. Ayaka Freeze has been out of the meta for a while. It's still very strong though at times, but overall it's just not keeping up with the brutality of some of these chambers. But I have never once got bored playing Ayaka. I mean, you can ask me, the certified resident Ayaka main, since day one of her release, literally day one of her release. I couldn't even raise her yet. I didn't have her ascension materials because I hadn't played through Inazuma, so I had to use her at level 40 because of the trial. You get some handguards. I had to use her at level 40, going through the entire game until I could level her up, and I have not stopped using her since. She's my favorite character, and you know, you can say I'm biased or whatever, but if I got bored of her, I wouldn't use her anymore. Like, as much as I love Mona, man, I love her kit. She's just such a basic character. You just press burst, you just blow stuff up. I don't use her anymore, really. Sometimes I'll use her in a Hutao team just to mix it up and do extra damage because of the Omen, but I don't use Mona anymore, man. Like, if I get bored of a character, I'm just not going to use her anymore. I got Yai. I don't really like her, but I was like, oh, she might have a cool playstyle, just blow stuff up with the turrets. I don't use her. I have Nahida, level 80. I never use her. I have her in, like, my party setups, I think, but I never use his party setups. So, I mean, you can kind of tell that from the fact that she's Friendship 3. Like, if you go through my characters, I have Friendship 10 on, like, every character up here. I'm trying to get Wander. I like Wander, but I kind of stopped playing the game as much after I got him. So I'm trying to get him up there. But, like, telling everybody, you can tell, I don't like Gay Miko that much. Nahida, Friendship level 3. Sucrose 10. Rosaria 6, because I fairly recently built her. Official 10. Kirara 3. I love Kirara, but I don't know. I just haven't played her. Like, I just get bored of these characters as much as I like Kirara, as much as I like Mona. I get bored of characters. All of that to say, I have never got bored playing Ayaka. Even when I had her at level 40 with my Blackcliff or my Amadona, I very slowly built up to getting her C4, and I got Miss Splitter. And every upgrade to her just felt like, man, I can really feel the results. Um, it's one of those nice things about hyper carries. Hyper carries, they take a lot of investment to reach max potential. They take a lot of effort and um, investment. And the thing is, once you get their supports, and it just so happens that Ayaka's two best supports, I'd say, Kazuha and Kokumi, are also just great characters in general, some of the best in the game. But then once you get those upgrades for your character, you're like, man, I can really feel that improvement, and it just feels good. And I can't speak for everybody, but the people that I've heard say that Ayaka's boring, say that she's not worth playing, that she's too reliant on her burst. Um, I just say maybe you should try using her again, because I think she's always been really fun, always will be very fun for me. Um, I just love her character too. At the end of the day, pull for characters you want to use. That's why I got Nilo day one she came out. I got her C1, kind of on accident, but I did get her C1. I got her weapon. Like, I love Nilo's character. I didn't know if she was gonna be good. I kind of assumed she'd be garbage. Turns out she's actually pretty awesome. But like, go for the characters you want. I got Alhaitham. He's level 90. I use him way more than my Nagia, even though he's almost strictly a downgrade to her. Like, go for characters you want. But if you're looking for a meta pick, Ayaka's good, very fun to play in my opinion. You see a lot of big numbers, and it feels very good to invest into her. So, at the end of the day, thank you guys for watching. This is a very long video. This has been Aqua Taser, and I'll see you on the next one.